Welcome back on this Friday morning. You're watching News Breakfast. Great to have your company. Australians looking for somewhere to live are facing a double whammy this morning, with fresh data showing a lack of houses to buy or rent are continuing to push up prices. Housing price reports from CoreLogic and PropTrack both show continued national prices growth, with Brisbane, Adelaide and Sydney leading the charge off the back of an unusually busy winter.
Rents have also continued what is now nearly 3 years of straight price increases, and while they're showing signs of easing, there is also a clear trend of fewer listings across all the major capitals. Madeleine's out on the streets of Melbourne for us this morning. Madeleine, break these figures down for us.
Yes, good morning, Michael. This is pretty dire news for anyone looking to rent or even to buy in Australia at the moment. So house prices have seen their 6th consecutive monthly rise, according to CoreLogic's latest monthly data. Nationally, there is a rise of 0.8% for the month of August, but there is a lot of variability across the capital cities. So let's break that down for you now. So in Sydney, the median house price is now knocking on the $1.1 million mark. Brisbane's median house price is almost as high as Melbourne. And in other capital cities, Hobart has seen the largest annual fall. We have seen Darwin and Canberra cool also. So a little bit of good news for people looking to buy in those markets.
What's the latest data telling us when you look at it?
It's telling us that things are very tight, and certainly if we're looking at the rental market as well, as you said, very, very tight. 36 straight months the rental market has gone up in Australia. So CoreLogic's data shows a national monthly rent increase of 0.5%. Now that is the slowest month-on-month increase in nearly 3 years. But if you look at it over a longer period of time, that annual increase is still 9%. That is almost 3 times the decade average. And I just want to show you, this is the rental. This chart tells you the story over the last couple of years. This is the annual change in unit rents. In Sydney, it is a whopping increase of nearly 17%. You're paying 17% to rent a unit on average more this time this year than you were this time last year. Perth and Brisbane, they're not far behind. And look, this is the rental vacancy over the last 10 years. I just wanted to show you this chart because it really tells a story. You can see their regions used to have much more availability. Now they are nearly as tight as the combined capitals, where there is only a vacancy rate of 1.1% in capital cities. These are historic lows. This is what is continuing to drive this rental crisis that we are seeing in Australia. I am out in Brunswick today. Very soon I'm going to be speaking with a family who couch surfed, stayed at neighbours' places, at friends' places for 3 years because they were unable to find affordable rents. They do have a nice and lovely, warm, safe place to stay now. It's changed their lives. This is what the difference rental availability and prices make in Australia.
Those are the rental crisis across the country. Mads is on the streets of Melbourne this morning and she joins us now. G'day, Mads. Can you talk us through this?
Lisa, I've got a bit of a high and some lows for you because the latest data that we have out from CoreLogic just today shows that rents have increased for 36 straight months across Australia. The pace of the rental increase is slowing somewhat, but in places like Sydney, for example, their rents still went up by 17% on average for units in the last 12 months. And that coincides with availability being incredibly tight at record lows, 1.1% availability across the national capitals. The reality of that means that people are desperate. People are sleeping in their cars, people are couch surfing, people are paying completely unaffordable amounts for their rent. Let's have a little bit of a chat now because I'm to Tiffany Sassafras. Tiffany and her son Sonny join us now from Brunswick, where we are in Melbourne. We're in a place called Nightingale, which is a not-for-profit housing provider. And Tiffany, this has really given you your first stable housing that you've had in a couple of years. Tell us about what your rental experience has been like for the last couple of years.
Well, I've been couch surfing, friends, family. I moved from Northern Rivers to Gold Coast, to Brisbane, to Melbourne, applied for hundreds of houses, couldn't find anything. Moved to Melbourne to be closer to family, thought it would be, you know, big city, find accommodation, ended up in emergency housing through an organisation called Juno, who put me to Vincent Care and then to Women's Property Initiative, I've now got this amazing apartment that I've been in for almost a year.
And it's a beautiful apartment. You live here with Sunny. You've got a great view out over the city. Beautiful, warm and cosy, all very eco-friendly, carbon neutral, which is great. The reality is that so many people can't find this kind of accommodation. What was it like when you were struggling for so many years to try and find an affordable rent?
It was quite stressful, but I have quite a happy sort of nature, and I started doing some sound healing, which helped me. So I studied a small business doing sound healing, art workshops and creative gatherings for women and children. So while I was couch surfing, I've been doing that as well.
So you've found the positive, and all kudos to you for absolutely doing that. Sunny, tell me what it's like now having a place of your own.
It's good.
What was it like when you were so insecure for those couple of years, really struggling to find somewhere to live?
It was a bit odd.
Odd? What do you mean?
Yeah. Can't really explain it.
Yeah. Let's bring in Lucy Sims, who is from the Women's Property Initiative. Lucy works with women across Melbourne, helping them to find affordable housing. Just explain what the Women's Property Initiative is and what you've done here for Tiffany.
Yeah. So Women's Property Initiatives is a not-for-profit community housing provider, Victorian community housing provider, and we provide long-term affordable homes to women and children who are at risk of homelessness.
Which is a growing cohort, we know. How dire is the situation out there for women and children?
It's very dire. The stats, which is why Women's Property Initiatives exist. So unfortunately, the gender inequity that we see, we are cohort specific for, and that's why we work with families like Tiffany and Sunny to help get them to create new beginnings in their communities and provide them with quality housing like we're in today.
Now, this is an affordable home, Tiffany, which means that you only pay 30% of your income, is that right?
That's right,
Okay.
yeah.
How scalable is this kind of a solution for what we see as the huge rental crisis in Australia, or can this only really work at a small scale, Lucy?
Well, I guess this is the trouble at the moment. We really need to see massive investment from both government and the private sector, and we need them to work together because the scale is enormous. At the moment, we have approximately 68,000 households on the Victorian Housing Register at the moment.
Waiting for public housing.
Waiting for affordable, social and affordable housing. So that's the scale of the issue. So we really need supply for more housing right across the board and across Australia. It's not just Victoria.
This is the challenge that is facing governments across Australia, the federal government, state governments. There is a target to build 1.2 million homes across Australia over the next 5 years. That is going to be a real challenge, but you can see here from Tiffany and Sunny why it is so important to have affordable, welcoming and available homes for rent in Australia.
Thanks, Matt.
A bit later in this final half hour of the show as well.
That is true. Well, this week we've been taking a look at the highs and lows of the rental crisis across the country, and Mads has been out and about today in Melbourne. G'day, Mads. Talk us through what we're seeing with this new data that's come out.
Lisa, welcome to the urban jungle that is Brunswick, about 5 kilometres north of Melbourne city centre. You can see here all of these units as people are getting ready to go to work. This is a very dense part of Melbourne, very highly in demand. What we're seeing in terms of the data is that unit prices in Melbourne have increased 15% nearly in the last year. If you look at somewhere like Sydney, they've increased 17%. And availability for rentals right across the country in capital cities is at a record low of 1.1%. People who are in these units are very lucky and they are probably paying top dollar. We are in a rental crisis in Australia. We don't have enough homes. Rents are too expensive. It's very difficult for people out there. But there are some solutions. Everything is being thrown at this, and I'm here today in Nightingale, which is a not-for-profit apartment block run by an organisation which aims to build carbon-neutral, affordable and welcoming homes for people. Look at this beautiful communal garden that they've got right here. So Nightingale works on a principle of reducing the space that people need to have in their units to keep the prices down, and they share things like a laundry or a garden. And we can speak now to Nemesia Kennett, who is from Nightingale. Nemesia, thanks for joining us. A little bit earlier in the program, we spoke to Tiffany, who is one of your affordable housing tenants here. Just explain how the Nightingale principle works, who you sell to and who you rent to.
So Nightingale's a not-for-profit and we focus on making our homes attainable to a diverse mix of owner-occupiers and also people in need of long-term affordable rentals. So we sell our homes at cost, being a not-for-profit. What it costs to build the home is what we charge for the homes, and then we sell at a discount 20% of our homes to community housing providers like WPI, Housing Choices Australia and others to make sure that we can help out, because we believe the residential property sector can and must do more.
Tiffany, who we spoke to a little bit earlier, is paying 30% of her income in her rent, which is pretty good when you look at some people in Australia at the moment are paying 70% of their income in rents alone, which is completely unsustainable. How many units does Nightingale have across Australia?
We have completed or are in planning or under construction of about 1,000 homes, just over. Our homes are all sustainable, they're financially sustainable, they're environmentally sustainable, that's very important, they're fossil fuel free, and they are also built with community connection in mind.
This is all great, but 1,000 homes is not very many when we look at the scale of the need in Australia. The scale is so great. At the moment, we heard a little bit earlier, in Victoria alone, there are 68,000 households in need of social and affordable housing. How much can governments do? How much can the not-for-profit sector do? Does the bulk of it really just have to go to the private rental market and private construction market and what we're in Australia?
I think it's a mix from all sides of the sector. So there is absolutely a place for government in social and affordable housing, and I think the government is starting to really recognise that, but also the private sector, and ultimately, even though we're a not-for-profit, we're a private not-for-profit, so there's all kinds of people, people who want to impact invest, super funds who focus on sustainability and affordability, all have a place to play.
You're just about to, you're starting work on a build-to-rent project in Sydney, so this particular project here is mostly owner-occupiers with 20% for long-term renters, but this affordable. But this build-to-rent project in Marrickville in Sydney is going to be purely for renting. Talk to us about build for rent. Is that how we're going to see the enormous demand met in the future, with specific buildings built for long-term renters?
That is one of many things. There's all different kinds of homes that we need. Pretty much we need all homes to be built. Marrickville is a unique case. It's a partnership between Nightingale Housing and Fresh Hope Communities. Fresh Hope have identified underutilised land that they own, and they're repurposing that for the community to build 100% affordable long-term rentals, which again is something Nightingale is very focused on. So that's a great example of underutilised land and a conscious investment being made to serve the community for affordable rentals.
What's nice about this particular community is that there is a focus on the community building. So there is the community garden here. If you look over, Peter, at just over my shoulder, you can see the sheets blowing in the wind there. That's also a Nightingale project where there is the community laundry that people come together. Thank you very much, Nemesia, for talking us through all of this. It's a very interesting project, but it is effectively a small piece of the puzzle, this huge puzzle that we're trying to solve in Australia about how we get enough homes. We need all hands on deck at the moment. This is one answer. It's certainly not going to solve the housing crisis, but it's been lovely to be here this morning at this not-for-profit housing provider.
Mads, thanks for giving us another angle on it all.